Well, welcome, Sebastian, and thank you
Shannon.
so much for being here today. Would you just be kind enough to explain for our listeners today how you went from being a lawyer to becoming the chief people officer at Beachcomber?
Thanks for the question, Shannon. It's an interesting one. To take a step back, for you to understand how I got there, I think a lot of it comes to the COVID situation. So I joined Beachcomber in May 2019 to set up the legal department. It was a new challenge for me, contrary to the previous jobs I'd occupied, being in a legal department and heading one and then setting up one from scratch, where there were no online files, was nothing. So that was the challenge. Lo and behold, I would never have realized that today, in June 2023, I would be in the position I am. Not at all. So how it progressed was that taking up the position in May, worked a lot on many quite complex legal files, and then boom, COVID hit us in March 2020. And being a company which at that time had, give or take, ballpark 4,500, 600 employees, the first thought that came to mind was survival. And lockdown came about, and that was a challenge on its own. And as I've always said to people, it was a unique opportunity to be with the management team and learn how to navigate complete darkness. It was a subsequent lockdown, things were a bit more clearer, but this first one was challenging, even more so being stuck at home, with my wife and two very young boys. So it was an immense challenge, but the principal focus was on the legal side, labor, understanding how we can cope with the current situation, not understanding how it's going to unfold and reveal itself in the months ahead. So that entailed an immense amount of dealing on the Workers' Rights Act, and the Workers' Rights Act had just come into force, in fact, in October 2019, a few months before the crisis hit. So there's a question now of understanding many of these mechanics, how they apply during COVID, and so that was purely legal perspective. We are obviously very unionized company with two trade unions, so one for the hotels and another for our in-flight caterer, Beachcomber Catering. Also dealing with them to work together as partners through the crisis. So this obviously brought me very much to the fore with my collaborator and my colleague at the time in the role of Chief Human Resource Officer, Bertrand Piat. And we worked closely together over between then, as of then, all the way to at least February 2022. So that's what really brought me to the fore on everything to do with the legal side of labor law, and you naturally work very closely with your HR colleagues, and you start understanding most of what it entails. And it's also important to bear in mind, given the volume of employees that we do have, obviously a labor-intensive company, which necessitates a big implication, both from a legal perspective and from a human perspective, and that's where the two roles coalesce, and they can actually work together. Because if you were to ask me today, in my current role, what is the volume of legal work I deal with, 50% easily is matters to do with labor law. You see, whether it be dealing with the trade unions or advising the various business units on employment relations or the Workers' Rights Act. given the volume of employees, it's labor intensive in hospitality. So, and then on the odd occasion, we do have quite some big transactions that come along every 2 to 3 years, or every year. We recently went through a major transaction with our subsidiary company, Beachcomber Hospitality Investments. So it's a question of being able to manage everything, and that's where Shane has been a major help, and he brought an immense contribution towards the legal department since she joined some 7 to 8 months ago from Alteo.
So Shane Malev, who's one of the parents at our school, and so she has a couple of children, I think, at Dukesbridge.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a shout out to her, and a thanks to her for all her immense contribution to ensuring that the legal department works as smoothly as possible, because today she handles a lot of the operational side of the work, the contracts with the various business units, and deals with them directly. So she's got a lot of experience, and can certainly pull a weight when it comes to being an experienced in-house counsel.
Oh, I'm sure she'll be thrilled to hear that.
Yeah.
Sebastian, the theme for our podcast is actually happiness at work. And so as the Chief People Officer for Beachcomber, which you mentioned has around 4,200 staff,
Absolutely.
What does happiness actually mean to you, and do you think happiness is important in the workplace?
Happiness means something different to everyone. What I consider to be happiness for me may not be what you consider to be happiness for you. What I consider to be valuing a position may not be what you consider in the same light. I think perspective is important when we look at the term happiness, and what I discovered by working with Beachcomber is happiness at work, and then I'll address what it means to others. Happiness at work, I believe, is giving the best of yourself on a daily basis, always being there to help those around you, to be in a position to be able to contribute always, doing your best even when the situations are challenging, because granted we do have many challenges at a corporate level at Beachcomber, but as a team I firmly believe that we are in a great position to surmount those challenges, and all of that amounts to happiness at work when we can all pull that together as a team and work towards a common goal. I think that working for Beachcomber and what it represents amounts to pride, joy and happiness. Beachcomber is a massive company, a huge brand. When you look at what you contribute towards, being the hotels that we own and operate, and the sheer scale of those hotels and what they do and what they offer to people and what our staff offer to our clients, you can only be happy and be proud to be working for Beachcomber. That's what I consider as happiness from my perspective. Now, happiness for those of my colleagues working in the hotels, completely different. What we discovered with them via our artisan value proposition journey, which we are currently on at the moment, is that it's founded on a principle of our employee value proposition called Feel the Happiness You Give. And what we discovered was that happiness for them was to ensure that our clients and guests are happy. And I've got goosebumps when I think of it, because it's wired in biology. You know, when you, Simon Sinek says it, when you give something to someone or you offer help to someone, automatically you feel joy. You know, it's serotonin, it's our neurotransmitters working, and that generates, that's biological. And this is what they told us, without knowing that necessarily. This is what they explained to us in our surveys, and it's to serve. For them, happiness is to serve the clients and to contribute to the client's guest experience and journey. And that was a very powerful experience for us. So that's the operational side. From the corporate side, it's different. We are support services to the hotels, and what we consider as happiness, I believe, is, like I said, pride and joy for the brand, working as a team towards common objectives, and
Yeah, that's really cool. At Dukesbridge, our motto is teaching happiness, and it's something that we really strive to have a really happy environment in our schools. And what we loved hearing about was your tagline at Beachcomber, and you just said it before, feel the happiness you give. And I just wondered, how did that philosophy come about?
When I took over the role of Chief People Officer in March 2022, doing my research, because if you look at my profile, you will very quickly see I come from everything but an HR background. So I did do a lot of research when I got appointed in the role to understand where are the pain points and where are the impact points. And one concept I came across was the EVP, the employer value proposition, which essentially is understanding why our colleagues wake up in the morning, why they come to work, and why they put a smile on their face to do what they do. And in doing so, I realized that the answer is extremely deep and meaningful in a context whereby we were really struggling to recruit certain positions.
Even
still now, but I believe that what we're doing at the moment is generating and will generate value for us down the line in terms of recruitment of Mauritians in these key positions. So, for instance, if you take a valet who looks after the room of a client, we tend to underestimate the impact that a valet or a waiter has on the client experience. The valet will enter into the intimacy of a client in the room, clean the room, see the toothbrush of a client, the smallest aspects, and is in contact directly or indirectly with the client and contributes towards that experience. The question is then why? The question I ask myself, why can't we recruit in those positions? What has happened following COVID? And I said to myself, let's ask those who are with us now. So Shannon, if you were a valet, what we did is to understand why you come to work. Do you come to work only for your pay slip today? Is that why you're there? Are you only there for the money because you need to feed your family? Is that the principal reason? If it is, it's fine. That's okay. But we wanted to understand that. But we understood, however, quite the contrary. In that we dug and dug and dug until we had goosebumps to understand why they are there. And you need to dig with the EVP. You need to question the person. Dig until the person tells you why they are there. And that response will most certainly give you goosebumps. And those goosebumps are what we call feel the happiness you give. That's why they are there. It is a bottom-up approach whereby it's not the top management that define that principle, and EVP is fundamentally and technically defined by the employees. It's why the employees are there. So we call it the bottom-up approach, contrary to the top-down. And in doing so, the employees also helped us define what are the principles that support that proposition. That proposition is equivalent, the EVP is equivalent to your unique selling point in marketing terms. The unique selling point of Mauritius Beachcomber and that of Royal Palm are not the same. The clientele are not the same. So the EVP, feel the happiness you give, is basically the employee style unique selling point of our company from an employment perspective, what we offer. And that principle is supported by several give and gets. based on sub-principles such as grow together, share and care, feel confident in a robust company, have fun, set the trend. And with these principles comes what we call the give and the get. That is, we want to be able to attract and repel. Beachcomber is not for everyone, and everyone is not for Beachcomber. And we want people to understand that. If you want to work at Beachcomber, you need to give certain components. You need to give your hard work. And in return, you'll get a place where you can grow, where you'll be coached, where you'll be trained to be able to achieve your maximum potential. So you need to be able to offer your hard work, offer your integrity. And in return, we will give you certain components, and that's what you call the give and the get. And that is made clear to our current colleagues and those who want to join. This is what the promise is, you know.
That's really cool.
So it's buttressed on the give and get principle.
So in so many ways, I perfectly understand the feel the happiness you give, a tagline. In fact, I seriously think that there's no greater happiness than being able to make someone else happy. And a lot of times people tend to think it's all about, you know, what I can get out of it. But in fact, making someone else happy brings you to a different level, a different dimension of happiness. So I totally understand that.
Sure.
But I want to play devil's advocate here, if I may. You know, if you tell, let's say a child, look at this friend of yours who's on the other side of the road and he's eating his ice cream and he's salivating his ice cream and, you know, he's obviously very happy about this. You can just watch him and feel happy about this, but you can't have the ice cream yourself. Very extreme example.
Sure.
But I just want to put it out to you. So those employees at Beachcomber, they are obviously not on the beach, you know, or swimming in the ocean, or
Absolutely.
eating, you know, the Michelin star restaurant food that sometimes you provide to your guests. And yet you're telling them you need to feel the happiness that their guests are experiencing. Isn't that a little cynical?
I guess when we spoke about perspective earlier, I guess that could be an answer. However, you know, we don't sell promises. I think that where the EVP comes to counter that cynicism that certain people have about the sector is that there's a give and a get. So we're not just telling you, give us this, and then we'll promise you the moon. No, if you come to Beachcomber, we can promise you certain very valuable attributes going forward for your career, career development and so on and so forth. There are many examples of that. But you need to be able to give us, you know, your hard work and so on and so forth. Given the get is very important, and I believe helps counter what you just mentioned. Now, there is a perception in the industry that when a prospective employee comes in for a position, they walk in through the front door, and when they sign the contract, the next day walk in through the back door. Those are processes that I believe need to be corrected in certain hotels, whereby we need to, and this is an industry-wide, I wouldn't say problem, but concern, is that for the industry to gain the attractiveness it once had, we need to see our employees in the same light as we see our guests. And I spoke about the EVP and the unique selling point. It's important that we are able to offer an experience today. Whether we talk about generations and generation gaps and generational conflicts, it exists. But at the end of the day, these are human issues. They're human. And I believe if we can offer an experience, an employee experience, in parallel to a guest experience, that's what will be the game changer. And this is the journey that we are on at the moment, towards defining this employee journey, defining our employee experience. We're not there yet. In all humility, we've just started it a little over a year ago. It takes time. You need to break barriers. You need to challenge conventional wisdom. But this is what needs to be done, and this is what my team are doing with the full support of our management team. So we're talking about an existence, a company that has existed and operated since 70 years. And those 70 years are full of joys, experiences, and great things. But the 70 years also have a lot of difficulties that need to be addressed. And this is what the employee experience is supposed to do, to ensure that any form of cynicism can be counted, whereby, we can say, this is our experience. You come to Beachcomber, this is the journey. If you want to achieve that level, this is what you need to do. It's transparency. You can understand what you need to do in order to get to that position. And it's not, you don't know, you join in a position, you don't know where you're going to go in 5 years' time. And
it also goes back to what you had said before, regarding happiness to you may not be the same as what we would define happiness, or what would bring us happiness. So maybe for that employee, they don't need the Michelin star restaurant food. That may not be what will make them happy, but maybe a day off, or maybe, an acknowledgement in some other way.
Absolutely. In our journey that we're working on at the moment of our artisan experience, we have all worked on, about 150 of my colleagues and myself included have worked on various enhancement areas, following the surveys that we did, to not only understand what it means to be an artisan of Beachcomber, but also understand where are the pain points. And over these months, we've been working in groups of 4 to 5 persons from various hotels on certain pain points. My group, which I worked on, and there are several others, certain on inflation rates, how to address inflation rates, how to address welfare, how to address career growth. Mine was on the only group. You had several working on the same topic, so they'd come up with different solutions. My group was on how to bring value to hospitality jobs, which is really the crux of what we're talking about, because value for me may not be the same, what the perception of what value is for a person operating a stewarding job, or that of a valet or a waiter, because our lives are different. Our lives are different and our aspirations are different. And what we found, Rishi, was that the value for these people, and these are my colleagues generally, is not in leisure, not in social benefits, but in funding and again, I got goosebumps when I said this, it's funding the education of their children and having a home. And we found out quite happily that many of them own their homes. They've been with us for many years, and that's what value is for them. Looking after their kids. I believe it's like that for everyone, but we would probably have a few more additions to that list. But for them, that is the priority. That's the main priority for them.
Great.
I have seen actually a number of videos that you've put out, interviewing your staff, them sharing their reasons for being there. Could you share with us some of the stories that have come out, and the success stories of bringing in this tagline of "Feel the happiness you give," and how that has benefited your company?
Well, there have been too many to mention. We have, in following the development of our EVP, our communication department has really been on the forefront to support this initiative, and we are currently working with an employer brand consultancy, an external consultancy firm in employer branding, and they have just completed what we call a casting of numerous staff at Beachcomber, and it's more, I've allowed more of my colleagues to be involved in that. Took a bit of a step back and allowed them to appreciate those moments, because I'm often in the operations, I often meet people, but my direct team in the head office, I let go, and I said, go and be on the casting, listen, find that inspiration, to be able to do your job better. And so it was a colleague of mine in particular called her name is Anusha Ram. She spearheaded the whole process of the casting with the comms team, and she was really on the forefront. I think that she would be able to offer a vast explanation on what she saw, but what she gave me as feedback was absolutely extraordinary, because the feedback went far beyond what we could have ever imagined, and in several instances the consultants were in tears as to what they heard. It's all positive. We're not talking about negative. It's all positive. We're here to generate positivity about feel the happiness we're given, why these artisans are here. It just went a bit deeper to understand what this means to them and their personal journey through Beachcomber, many of whom have been with us for sometimes over 30 years. So it's a lifetime. And there will be subsequent videos coming out soon. There was a teaser recently on it. You can check out our social media platforms, and I'm personally looking very much forward to also discovering what they have said about what it means. So it's a teaser even for me, although I can guess, what it's been like as an impact. Yeah.
Sebastian, in hospitality, you always expect to see smiles on everyone's faces. So whether you're the waiter, whether you're greeted by the valet, just anyone in the hotel industry or restaurants, you expect them to be positive. But then recently, in fact it was last year, Shannon and I were at the hotel, and something took us by surprise. In fact, we were at breakfast, and this lady, the waitress, so she came to pour coffee, and she just said, "Good morning, ma'am, how are you today?" And Shannon said, "Oh, I'm really well, thanks, and how about you?" And she said, "I'm not well today, I'm sick." And we were just like, it took us by surprise, because we didn't know whether, is that something that she's supposed to say or not. We'd never heard it before, because like I said, the expectation is that they're always, smiling and happy and feel positive. And so then it got me thinking, well, actually, the reality is that people are not always well or not always happy. But is there an expectation or an etiquette, professionally or otherwise, that they have to always look a certain way?
I believe it's a complicated question, because I believe that everyone has their own experiences in life and their own journey on a day-to-day basis. At Beachcomber, I believe that we believe in vulnerability. We believe in our employees being able to voice out what are their troubles, whether it's with clients or not. That's debatable, because certain of our clients come back to Mauritius not for the thatched roofs or for the nice pools. They come back for the staff, especially the repeaters. They are some of our colleagues who have been invited to the weddings of the clients, of the children of clients. There's a wonderful proximity and relationship that has been developed over the years. Now, I do believe that yes, in certain hotels, there are staff who do query, certainly after COVID, how are things, how did, to understand the brand, how did the company treat you? How were you brought back to work? How did things go? I firmly believe that Beachcomber handled it seamlessly. Now, to expect that everyone puts a smile on their face despite the difficulty, I think I don't think that is acceptable. I think that we are human and we need to be able to voice out. I believe the channel in which you voice out, though, is important. And a good segue to that point is that one of the first things I thought about when taking up the position of Chief People Officer, the first one, was to bring a psychologist on board. Because coming out of a sanitary and health crisis, whereby for almost 2 years, 18 months, give or take, our staff were locked up, didn't come to work, obviously took second jobs here and there to make ends meet because there's no overtime. I believed it was important that not only we listen to them, but that we ensure that there is an impartial and independent person there to be able to listen to them within a controlled and confidential environment. So as of today, we've been working with Xavier Béchard, who developed a program called Employee Assistance Program, which has been developed in New Zealand. And he's been working with us for over 6 months now. We've just renewed his contract for another year. And for 4 hours every Wednesday across all our hotels, there's a psychologist there. And there's a helpline. There is the possibility to call that helpline, book a rendezvous either physically or via WhatsApp. Wow. So this is something I firmly believe in. I think that we need to have that proximity as a company, but we also need to put into place the framework to help them share certain difficulties, because certain difficulties you can't share in the workplace. It's just too sensitive or too difficult. And we know that, like the experience you just stated, is that lady could have been suffering from anything. Mm-hmm. We don't know, child could have been sick, she could have been suffering from depression, anxiety. You don't know, it can be anything. And I think to be able to allow someone to voice out that to someone they don't know is even more important. When you know the person, you feel embarrassed. The next day you come back, you say, is the person judging me from what I said yesterday? But with a psychologist, you don't know the person, he doesn't know you, he or she. So I believe these little contributions here and there will help to ensure that our colleagues can keep that smile in as many circumstances as possible when dealing with clients. But we're all human at the end of the day, and there's no set definition that you need to be smiling all the time. It's not. We're not in a dictatorship, certainly not. We're humans, and we promote vulnerability, which is important.
But I do feel somehow that you need to have a professional self, and it depends on the circumstances, obviously. But for example, we're in a school and we can't expect, let's say, a teacher who's going through stuff to come in and cry in front of her kids, because I think the children will be affected by that. So it's not so much we're saying fake it, but there needs to be some kind of self-control in terms Absolutely. Of what you say, how you are perceived towards the clients, towards whoever you're serving. And then what you said about providing a psychologist, providing an outlet, an area where the person, the employee, can then release some of the emotions that they feel truthfully to that person
and gain advice.
And advice.
And advice, that's the key part, that independent advice, because a psychologist is a bit like a coach or mediator. Coaching, you don't offer the answer. Guide the person towards the answer. In mediation, two parties are mediating. You can't ethically tell them, even if you know the answer's there, you can say, guys, the answer's there. You can't, you need to guide them towards that. And same for the psychologist. They cannot ethically tell the person what to do. They need to guide the person to come to the realization, that's what it is. I think that's what I need to do. And that whole process of not only listening, but guidance is fundamental for me personally. And we need to promote that, not only to smash the taboo of mental health. It's what I've always said to my colleagues. There's no physical health without mental health. And psychological well-being.
Like this idea of breaking down that stigma of that mental health is something that we can't share with each other. I love that idea that you've got this psychologist there to be able to meet with staff. What an incredible idea. That's really Bravo to you guys. Let's face it though, in the hospitality industry, it's not a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday kind of gig. And how do you make sure that staff are motivated and happy even to do those, like you were saying before, overtime shifts, evening work, weekend work, public holiday work? Some of those staff are giving up that New Year's Eve kind of thing, which is a big holiday for us in Mauritius, in that context of they're missing out on that time with their family or their loved ones. How do you make it, what's the get in that for them?
Okay. So the hospitality industry, like you stated, it's on 9 to 5. We are a 7-day operation. We can vary rosters, but the operation, the client will always need to be catered for and served on a Sunday, on the 31st of December or 1st of January. These are inescapable realities that the industry faces. And that's very good for the country as well, because this is why we are known as one of the best tourist destinations in the Indian Ocean. So what motivates, what's a motivational factor for people to undertake these different duties? I think first it's the realization, and that's what I realized, is that hospitality and being with the guest is a bit like being a priest or an imam or a teacher. It's a vocation. It goes beyond being a job. When you see what our artisans do for the clients and the extra mile that they go, it's out of their own professional duties, their own professionalism, the way that they have been trained, and the way that Beachcomber works. And it's a vocation, it's not a job. This is, for me, that's the first point. It's an absolute vocation. Today with, I believe we're hearing a lot in the media about the industry, the long hours, especially vis-a-vis youngsters. I think that a lot rests on leadership, capacity building, and the ability of heads of department and general managers to galvanize the teams when times are hard. 80%, even more, of the employee experience is not offered by me or by my team in the operations. Be honest about that. If it were, it would be a failure. 80% is offered by the heads of department. If someone leaves a position in Beachcomber tomorrow and it's a difficult situation, in most likelihood it will be because of difficulties with the reporting line, not with me or my team necessarily. And that's where it's important. That's where it's important. I believe that if the leadership and the soft skills and the emotional intelligence is all there in the right place, and that our leaders properly understand the mechanics of that and the power of that, you can do anything. And it's all a question about being positive. You know, you can look at a situation and moan with your team, say, you know, how are we going to do this? It's challenging. Or you can say, look, stop complaining, let's be positive, get it done, and then you come and see me. See the difference it will make. You know, all a question of mindset. And there was an assistant supervisor in the stewarding department in my group for our EVP projects. And his name is Ukesh. He works at Trobisch. And out of the blue, when we're discussing value and amazing experience, because I'm someone from corporate, he's in the operations, you know, I realized when speaking to him that this person is a leader. He's an assistant supervisor, that he explained to me what he did on the last 31st of December. There was no staff, just him and 2 persons in his team to clean several restaurants. And he said to me how he motivated those 2 to get the job done with him. He did it with them. And for me, that's leadership. That is fundamentally an example of leadership, and a leader without title, if you want. So if we have leaders like which we do at Beachcomber that contributes to the employee experience, And then you don't ask yourself any more questions about 31st of December or 1st of January, because these are realities. It's all about the leadership we have and our ability to galvanize our staff to achieve these objectives.
So when it comes to cultural diversity, which is obviously something that we celebrate here in Mauritius, and in your hotels you will have people from all different ethnicities and religions. And I wanted to ask how that works in the sense of professionalism and even grooming in uniform, because there was this landmark case where an employee of another hotel was told not to wear her tikka, and she obviously was very attached to that. She sued the company and she was able to actually, it was found that she could in fact continue wearing that. Have you had any kind of thoughts on that? What do you think about this?
We've had no issues as far as I'm aware over the last few years. Be it from a legal perspective or a people one in terms of cultural diversity. We fully promote it. Cultural diversity is important. We have within our teams members from various communities, representative of what Mauritius is today and what makes our strength as a nation and what I believe makes our strength as a company as well. It's not something which we are afraid of, and I think everything is about the approach. The case that you gave, if it went to court, it's because it was mishandled or handled possibly in a brutal way vis-a-vis the employee. We have a grooming and etiquette policy. It is what it is. Within that case, I think it's all about how you explain it to the person. If it's not in your policy, it's all about how you go about it. Obviously, if it's gone to court, there must have been antagonism between the two parties, and that's what you need to avoid. So cultural diversity needs to be promoted. Obviously, within the framework of a hotel, there are uniforms, there's a way of dressing, and these are matters to be respected within the hotel, a bit like within a school as well. You've got a uniform to wear, and so there you are. Yeah.
So during COVID, obviously the hospitality sector has been hit significantly, probably a bit more than other sectors. And I suppose hotels face a very difficult situation where a lot of their staff had to be laid off, or some of them took early retirement, voluntary redundancies, etc. But then post-COVID, what we've noticed is that a lot of those employees did not go back to hotels. In fact, they chose another sector or refused to even go back to the hotels. And so do you feel somehow that they felt like hotels did not look after them? They felt a bit abandoned. And but then again, when you're faced with such a difficult situation, you're still a business, you still need to work. How do you make sure that employees are not left behind and still address your crisis?
Sure. I think that is it's a fair comment and a fair perspective on COVID. I can only comment from the perspective of Beachcomber. What we did engage in voluntary retirements, but quite generous ones. I do believe that we did offer the best that we could to our employees at the time, so much so that when employees do want to retire now, they would like to retire based on what we offered during COVID, which unfortunately was unprecedented. Precisely, we didn't offer as per our pension fund rules. We went a bit over and beyond to ensure that people would be fine and would accept that if they chose. It was perfectly voluntary. At no point in time, being the largest hotel group in Mauritius, could we afford a reputational hit by being framed in the public eye as being a company kicking people out. That's just unacceptable. So we went as per law, and we're very comfortable with that. Now, post-COVID, we have seen a huge shift. of the attitude of certain persons who occupied certain positions at the time pre-COVID versus now, the answer is simple for me. And I also discovered this in my AVP, my EVP, project with my group, is that when you're looking at persons who occupy positions such as a waiter or a steward or a valet, like I said, not only do they guarantee a certain client experience because they're on the front line. When you eat at a restaurant, you serve by a waiter, and that person is going to be the fundamental contributor over and above what you eat of your experience in that restaurant. You got the decor and all of that, yes. But he's going to be a major contributor, him or her. So not only that, that's something important to bear in mind, but above all, their skills are transferable skills. They're often seen as low grade, low paid, unimportant positions, which is so far from the truth because of what I've just said about the client experience and the transferability of their skills from hospitality to healthcare, to cruise ships, to do anything basically that they want to work as a bricklayer, you name it. They can do so many things. And what's even more concerning is that those skills are not transferable within the hospitality industry, like what I just mentioned, transferable to other sectors, which means that other sectors are becoming direct competitors of the hotel sector. And that's where we need to ensure that we value these positions properly and from a holistic perspective, whether it be remuneration and whether it be everything else attached to that. The toilets of these persons, where they are, their rest areas, the food that they eat, the very basics in terms of welfare, that needs to be matched. And that's where I think that as we look back in time in the sector, too much emphasis has been put on the guest. And we have forgotten about the value of our staff. I'm not only speaking for Beachcomber, but I'm speaking for the industry as a whole, very honestly. And that COVID has been a very, very, very difficult reminder or reality check for the industry as to the importance of these people who we previously thought are low grade, unimportant positions, because when they left back in the day, there were 10 other valets waiting to join. It's not the case anymore, because precisely those skills are transferable elsewhere. So there we are.
It's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
But it was a blessing in disguise for us, actually, because through that process, we got a couple, 2 or 3 maintenance guys from the hotel sector, and they're excellent. That's the
Thank
school.
you.
So yes,
You are, but it's case in point.
yeah.
Case in point.
But no, they need to be valued, and they're doing a fantastic job. And I don't doubt that they were doing a fantastic job where they were before they joined the school.
But I invite you, when you have a moment, do check on our LinkedIn or Facebook social media platforms. Have a look at our Labor Day video. I put all the emphasis on these colleagues.
Yeah.
And those colleagues who work in the background. I wanted our Labor Day video to be a tribute to them.
I saw that.
That's important.
It was lovely.
And absolutely important. And at one point you spoke about maintenance. At one point you do see a colleague of mine at Chandrani, who's a tradesman, and he was explaining how proud he is. There's pride in his job. Even if back in the day we would deem that as being an unimportant position, he is proud. He has dignity for what he does, and he has built his house, and he has fed his family, and he's proud of that. That's, for me, it's so meaningful.
Yeah, I remember that story.
So meaningful, and
Lovely.
a lot of the speaking about the casting I mentioned earlier, it's a lot to do with that. Those sort of experiences and témoignages and testimonies. So I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Great. So on this note, I think we'd like to say thank you very much, Sebastian, for being with us today and for sharing some of your experience as a Chief People Officer for Beachcomber. We wish you all the very best in your career there, and keep making people happy.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Rishi. Thank you for your time.